about. And then also we'll open up to a broader set of discussion and opportunities for you all to share some of your experiences. And we're joined by Carlene Durham-McCrae, who is the, I won't give you the exact title, but from the Center of Identity and Inclusion, right? That's right, OMSA. I'm sorry, Office of Multicultural Student Affairs. Is it still called that?
That's one of the offices.
One of the offices. So Carlene will help us and facilitate the Q&A and the discussion amongst us. And so I appreciate your helping us out. Carlene did a wonderful job last spring in facilitating a community conversation near the end of the year. Okay, so Celia, did you want to say a couple additional things just to sort of set?
Hi everyone, I'm Celia Bergman. I didn't get to meet the first year students at orientation, so I'm very, very happy that you're here, and I'm sorry that you haven't really seen a lot of me yet, but hopefully you'll see more of me now that I'm back from China and getting back in the groove here. I did want to just take a couple minutes, and actually there's a nice warning sign up here on the window that this session is being videotaped and recorded, and Dominique, raise your hand one more time. There she is. So please take note of that if you are going to speak when it comes to the Q&A, just make note that you will be recorded. Okay? Also, I think one of my staff members, Joe, is there somewhere? Associate Dean of Students, Joe is also taking some notes, and we will be compiling those notes and making sure that that's available to the entire SSA community. And when we get to the Q&A, as Dean Guterman said, Carlene will help facilitate that portion. We do have time constraints, but we would like to provide an opportunity for anyone who doesn't have an opportunity to actually stand up and ask a question or make a comment. We're going to pass around some note cards and ask that you please fill out the note cards. We'll collect those, make sure that we take a look at all of your questions and feedback, put it together with some answers, and then disseminate that to the community as well. So we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to have their voice heard. Okay? All right, back to Dean.
I just want to say also, during the Q&A, so I mentioned Professor Samuels is here, who chaired the task force. So if there are questions specifically regarding the report, I think Professor Samuels and or members of the task force can feel free to speak up in response to that. If there are questions around climate and programming, Dean Bergman can certainly speak to that. Questions around the curriculum, Deputy Dean and Professor Zabnicki, and of course, I'm happy to weigh in. Okay? So many of you are first year, so let me give you a little bit of background, at least from my point of view, about why we're at this point and why we're here. I'm sure there are others that will share their viewpoints as well. As you may know, my email of about a week and a half ago referred to a student petition that was circulated last year that was very assertive, very thoughtful, and essentially said that while we have good intentions particularly around issues of difference and diversity, power, and privilege, that we are now essentially walking the walk. That is, in the curriculum of the school, in the climate of the school, we talk about justice, we talk about humane society and advancing a humane society. But the students that signed the petition last year essentially said to us, you can do better and you should do better. And in fact, I agree with that. So that's a starting point, but I should say the story goes further back. I won't go into too much detail, but there have been versions of this conversation at the school for a while. And I also want to go back to, not way back, but this school was founded, and our mission statement says that we do have foremost front and center value on advancing social justice and on advancing a humane society. That is our mission statement. It's inbred in the genetics of this institution. The founding mothers of the school came from Hull House, as you know, came in and wanted to create an institution that not only worked passionately and tirelessly to do that, but did so by professionalizing social work, did so by making sure that how we actually affect those charges is through rigorous analysis, through thoughtful, deliberate action, through testing our ideas, through, yes, bringing evidence to bear, because if we align all of those ways of thinking and formulating our approaches, then our work is going to be more impactful. Our work is going to be more valuable, and it's going to, at the end of the day, serve the cause best in advancing social justice and humane society. Now, that, of course, is something that we believe in, we affirm, and we try to realize and renew that aspiration every single day into school, into the present, and it is something that we do need to continuously work on. Are we there? Are we a perfect institution? I would say we're not there yet, but we should continue to strive to tirelessly do that. And I would say, as I think I said in my email, we're really works in progress, as are all of us. I think that we're all striving to effect those very important aspirations. And in fact, I think part of why, in my view, part of why students last year pulled together a petition and received many signatures from your colleagues, your fellow students, some alums and faculty, is because while we have, I think, internally been discussing and concerning ourselves, faculty have had a number of discussions around taking up issues of difference, power, privilege, and so forth, and sometimes we affect that.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We're not starting this off on the right foot. My name is Peter, and I'm a student representative of the Elephant. And before you continue, we need you to acknowledge that nothing has changed. First years are entering into the same environment second years entered into last year. Students are still being harmed here, and it's because you are not acknowledging that this is a structural issue.
So as you can see on this wall over here, we have what first years have shared with us about our experiences here. I'm going to read a few just to kind of provide us some context on what's been going on as a first year. As a pastor on the south side of Chicago, the communities I serve experience poverty, violence, death, police brutality daily. It is paramount that these conversations are wrestled with and reflections of these issues be continued and expressed. However, this institution closest to the community is not doing this, and the student is not seeing it share. The discussion of decentering whiteness and anti-oppressive discussions, especially in the anti-oppressive frameworks class, I think is something that should be highlighted as it pertains to that classwork. And also, as a first year student, race was a topic in many of the classes, but it wasn't until week 8 that professors specifically addressed race within the culture of SSA.
Dean Guterman, we represent students who are really disappointed, and we find it kind of ridiculous that you've convened this community meeting without consulting the very students that you've referenced who put together this petition and worked on the ad hoc committee with some of the faculty members. We would like to acknowledge that you did send an email to the leaders of these certain student groups that are represented here today 2 hours ago while most of us were in class, inviting them to talk with you after these meetings, and that is nice, but we are really, really upset with you for not having consulted any of these students ahead of time and in shaping this conversation.
The plan is to give back the floor now, but I think that we need to, everybody in this room needs to acknowledge that students are still being harmed, and that's because we believe that administration is not being thoughtful at all, both about your own identities and what's saying that we don't have a structural problem, or what's saying that academic freedom is meant to serve, what that means coming from you as a white male leader of this institution. I also think it's important that when you give us the commitments that we're moving forward with, people need to walk away knowing who they're going to be able to hold accountable for these things and when we're going to see them. And second years will not accept being weeded out.
Thank you. Appreciate that. and I would like to have a chance to be able to talk about plans. You're right, things have not changed overnight, that's true. And there are plans, and there's things that we have done and begun to roll out, and there will be more things that we will roll out. And if you'll give me a chance, I'll tell you why I think we're, in my view, why we're in the problematic state that it feels injurious.
We're not talking about overnight. It's been 6 months. We've had a summer to convene a meeting, and it's been years. You've been here for years.
Okay.
You've been here for years.
Okay.
It's
I
not
agree.
overnight. You
I
don't
agree.
get to represent it that way.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay, so urgency is of the day. I totally appreciate that. We're pushing on a number of things, and if you'll let me talk about some steps, I'm happy to talk about things that we are rolling out, things that we are changing on, and things that we'll continue to do. Okay? So, and then again, what I want to do also is provide opportunity to hear more from not only student groups, who yes, I do very much want to meet, and who the student groups are represented on the task force report. So they were, which I did meet with, the meeting day after, and either you were in the meeting, as were a number of you. So I have been meeting with groups, and I will continue to.
By when, Dean Guterman? When is your deadline? Who will
What?
be carrying these things out?
For which?
Yeah, so you say that you hope to address these issues. By when and by whom? We saw that your email of recommendations, but there were no deadlines. There was no designation as to who was going to carry those things out.
Okay, fair enough. Appreciate that. So we'll work to nailing down some deadlines on some of the active steps. Okay. So if you will let me talk, I would appreciate it. Just give me a moment, and then I'm happy to hear the rest of your comments. On September 30th, let me go back. At the end of the school year, what I asked was for a task force of students, faculty, and staff to come and put together recommendations that included how do we arrange our internal schools so that we can better take up these concerns, because I don't think we're well positioned to do that. And the task force worked very hard over the summer, and I very much want to acknowledge that they worked very hard over the summer and put together a very thorough report that you all have received now. As of September 30, I received it. Now, what I did is I brought the report to the full faculty of the school, because while you're asking me to be the one to respond, the school is governed by the full faculty of SSA. I am the leader in that sense. I'm the chief academic officer, but decision-making and policy is set by the faculty of the school.
So why don't all of your professors know about the anti-oppressive cohorts? All of them don't know about it. We've had them say that in classes. If they're governing, why don't they know?
Can we take that in Q&A or discussion? I don't know that that's true, and I can't respond to that. Unless you want to respond to that. I prefer to take that in Q&A. Okay. Okay, so following from the task force report, which had many important recommendations in it, and the task force itself recommended that this be responsive to a fuller scope of SSA constituents than were represented in the task force, and that was a big part of why we're having the meeting here, because I wanted to permit students broad opportunity to share their viewpoints, not just within the task force itself. So if you give me a moment to review briefly what was in the report itself, and then recommendations following from the report that we have run with vetted with faculty and with the senior administration of the school. So first of all, as I said earlier, I don't think that the organization can respond quickly enough, can respond robustly enough to the concerns that you are taking up. And as dean of the school, I think that we need to build in an organizational platform to be able to move robustly. And we don't have that. I'm in agreement with you on that. So what we will do, we'll move forward with setting up a new standing committee of the school, Social Service Administration, that will be staffed with faculty, students, and staff who will take up these concerns. We'll take the report of the summer task force, and we'll take up the concerns that you all are raising tonight and have raised before. That will add the organizational heft, that will add the clout for us to be able to move assertively forward as you're asking us to do tonight, and I appreciate that. One of the first assignments, if you will, of this task force will be to identify, to begin the search for a senior administrative person who will implement and help move forward on the agenda around difference, diversity, oppression, and so forth, both in the curriculum and in the climate at SSA. A second, as I mentioned in my email, that I've asked already the Curriculum Policy Committee to take up this content within the structure of the curriculum of SSA. So right now, last year, the Curriculum Policy Committee was reviewing the structure of the curriculum, and now I've asked them to be sure to fold in and into their revision considerations how we take up issues of difference, diversity, power, and privilege in the content of the courses, in the structure of the curriculum. Thirdly, we have now placed students on the Curriculum Policy Committee so that students' voices can be heard as they're being heard tonight, so the students' voices can be heard in the deliberation of the curriculum revisions themselves. And so that as we are actually moving forward in revising the curriculum, students can inform, advise, and apprise on that process. Okay? Fourth, as I mentioned in my email, we're planning trainings and faculty development opportunities, and right now we're in the middle of planning our annual faculty retreat. And that will be the primary topic of conversation, but that's not just going to be a one-off conversation. When we have the faculty take up these concerns and how we teach in the classroom, that will be the beginning of other faculty development opportunities. Fifth, as I said on my email, I've asked the Dean of Students, Celia Berkman, to begin a review and a revision of student grievance procedures so that the due process steps and procedures are clarified, so that they're fair, so that they're transparent, so that a grievance review is rigorous and fair. Sixth, as you know, as Dean Bergman emailed you recently, a student-run election and rules committee completed its work, reviewing and substantially strengthening and clarifying procedures around governing student elections. Last year there was some contention around that, and we wanted to review, revise, and make sure that the procedures were far more clear, explicit, so that so that disputes were much more easy to manage. And finally, as I said at the beginning, we will create other community venues, other opportunities for students to come together, to share what's on their minds, and to continue conversations. And I think there's a few already in the works that Dean Bergman may want to mention. Did you email about one already? Okay, so we're rolling out a series of additional community opportunities to discuss, okay? But I do want to go back to, I understand that we need to do something now. I hear you. I understand the sense of urgency. I appreciate you creating putting a fire under our feet, and we're moving. We're maybe not moving as quickly as you wish us to. I understand that. An institution like this does take some time. We are a deliberative body. I know you may not be sympathetic to that, to some of you that have spoken, but we want to do this right. We want to do this in a way that's enduring for SSA. We don't want to just rush in a way that's going to end up creating more problems than creating solutions.
Mic check. Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check. By when and by whom?
By
When and by
By
who?
when and by whom?
By when and
By who?
By when and by whom?
By when and by who?
In regard to what?
All of it. When and who.
I'll go through some detail. So on the, I think that, as I mentioned, the important point around setting up the organizational piece, the committee will compose that so that they're ready to go for the next quarter. Okay? It will take a little while for, let me phrase it this way. Hiring a senior administrator requires developing the job description, which there was a draft of in the report, posting the position, vetting resumes, doing interviews. That will take a few weeks to play out, to hire and identify that person, and we want to get the right person in. I understand the when, we need to move now. You want to nail me down to dates, I get that. But we also want to do this in a way where we get the right person. Okay. The Curriculum Policy Committee, I've already charged with that, with going through and taking up diversity content. Do you want to talk about timing, Tina?
Well, we're in the process of reviewing our curriculum and have begun conversations both within the committee and outside the committee between meetings to figure out how to best incorporate, how to best infuse content relevant to issues of oppression, discrimination, and privilege. And so we've already started talking about that, and students have been involved in the conversation. So we meet again next month. We just had a meeting in November. It was the second meeting of the quarter. So we only meet monthly, but there's a lot of the work that's done between our meetings that hopefully will move us forward in an efficient way.
We've already included students on the Curriculum Policy Committee, so that's something we've already done. We are planning our faculty retreat. I'm actually meeting with the deputy dean and the faculty of welcome. Bill Pollock, and tomorrow we'll set a date for the faculty retreat. Will probably occur in the winter. Dean Berkman, do you want to talk about reviewing the vision of student grievance procedures and timing there?
Sure. Well, I'm actually really looking forward to working with the new standing committee on policy revision, and I've been gathering materials from other academic units here at the University of Chicago, as well as some of our peer institutions, specifically on grievance, academic as well as non-academic. The law school has some great materials that I'm drawing from as well. So I'm really looking forward to, again, working with the standing committee. So hopefully once that committee's formed, we can get up and running with some of the policy revisions. So that's really the update that I have at this time.
On the review of the election rules committee, that committee has already completed its work. We have moved on a few things. Not enough. And we'll continue to move on other things. We will, as Dean Berkman mentioned, there are also some community forums that are being scheduled for. So I think at this point, that's what I wanted to report back to you. Charlene, did you want to help us facilitate the conversation? Q&A? Anybody have some?
Well, good evening again. I'm Carlene. You know, what's interesting in sitting here in this moment is is understanding and appreciating. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. Is yet again, I think what I said some months ago is just having to acknowledge the pain and frustration of the students. And I think it is important. I think it's also important for us as administrators, again, to not be surprised that our students are doing what they're doing. I don't know any institution or significant movements that happen without significant push. And the truth is, perhaps it shouldn't be the case, but this is where we live, right? This is where we live. So let's just sort of name that and be present in that. So I certainly appreciate it, and I think I can see it on all of us, that we do appreciate the pushing. And I think I said when I was here, for those of you who are first years, that even though I'm on the other side of the midway, we all have some responsibility to bear in this, right? It is not just what sits on this side of the midway. And so all of us have to find more innovative ways to be able to make sure that what you all are coming into, you all are getting. You know, sort of what we say you're getting, you're getting. And if you're not getting it, obviously, that we are continuing to listen to what it is that you all are offering and finding ways to share what is being done. And if it can't be done, to be able to say that too and why, right? Because that's part of this narrative. Some of what it is that we need and want may not happen, but we ought to be able to offer and be transparent about that. So I appreciate those of you who have already stood. I have to say, I think that activism is important, and I think we can't and we ought not to silence. So I do appreciate your willingness to sort of be here and to stand and continue to share, because if we don't do this, I'm not sure where we will be. So I want to just start out that way and say, this is also, you have half an hour left. I believe my understanding of it is you have classmates that will have class at 5:30. So there's a hard stop for some of you, but if other people want to be able to yet again share sort of where they're at, add additional sort of constructive criticism of where we ought to be, I think this is the continued time to do that. And I'm going to ask if people could just be mindful so that as many people can speak.
We just wanted to share 3 statements from a first-year student who didn't feel that the forum was a safe place to share this vulnerability. So these are on structural issues at SSA. One, SSA as an institution is not committed to anti-oppression values. This is a problem since it is part of our ethical code. In my experience, we spend so much time devoted to quote-unquote vulnerable populations without those voices in the classroom, and we never address ways to dismantle white supremacy in our practice. We teach to and for white students. We need to change this. In class, we've been told that issues around privilege and oppression can't be the main focus because there are too many other subjects to tackle. This makes no sense. Students need practical skills addressing privilege, power, and oppression in their work. Furthermore, students are aware that certain professors were met with resistance when they tried to integrate anti-oppressive practice values in their classroom. What kind of message does that send students? Students are hungry for this perspective in the classroom. They desire a more critical lens than what is being offered. Why not give it to them?
And I will be continuing this statement. SSA has no transgender awareness or competency for its students, nor in teaching students to work with trans individuals. I have been mispronounced multiple times by my field officer, which is why she is unable to advocate for me in my homophobic field placement. SSA gave the university health insurance the wrong gender marker, so my insurance does not cover necessary care. SSA has so many resources and access to knowledge, this is really quite ridiculous. Professors have no idea how to teach students how to support transgender individuals in the field. Professors either ignore the questions students ask surrounding the transgender community and/or teach based on a gender binary in their classrooms. Finally, after being in the field for a number of years, I have seen the damage many social workers do in the transgender community and communities of color. These issues aren't isolated in SSA. SSA is sending students out to the world without the proper tools, and then those students are hurting many of the communities they aim to support. SSA needs to address these issues with haste.
A particular question, but I wanted to give us some comments that you wanted to make around what you told.
Right now, it's an opportunity to do more listening.
And I appreciate the comments. I mean, they're very, very important. And you're reinforcing for us that we need to do this work. So I appreciate that.
So part of this is like a statement, and then the other part is a question. But coming to SSA, I think I've had certain professors who have actually empowered me to speak up when I did tell them about the experience of microaggression. So I really did appreciate that, because had not these professors told me to keep speaking up, I would not have taken the opportunity to do it. But I also want to point out that I think the curriculum also is a way of censorship. That it's predominantly white. It implies that there are not social workers who are Asian, who are Middle Eastern, who are Black or Latino, who are trans, who are sexual minorities that have significantly contributed to the field of social work, and I feel like it's very problematic. And I wonder, is there a lack of self-awareness on the committee side of people's identities, since maybe their identities don't fall in line with one of those things, that when the curriculum is being made, it's not, people are only thinking from their perspective or from their line of experience. And then my question is, I've noticed that bell hook is used for 2 of my classes, but it's the same exact article, and I'm like, she has written like how many different things, but none of the white authors are used in the same classes for the same purposes. So again, I feel like it's a form of censorship. I don't know intentionally, but as a student of color, it feels like my voice is being silenced.
And I hate to put folks on the spot, but I think there are administrators and other faculty members who are here, so as you hear students make comments or ask questions, I mean, yes, it's a moment to listen, but you have a lot of people here. I think there are also opportunities for you all to respond in some ways. Okay.
So my answer to your question could be 3 hours. And so I'm going to try to make this quick. I think it comes from a lot of places. I think censorship is one place. I think identities, lack of knowledge, lack of using diverse scholarship or ways of knowing in our own research is how then we show up in the classroom. And so I think what happens with the bell hooks thing is something like this happens, and then a list of readings happen, and professors think that I can just solve this problem if I just use this reading, and I'm going to use it all the time, and then I'm safe. And so I think it's a oversimplification and a misunderstanding of what the problem really is, and that much of what you all talk about in a classroom problem is actually a bigger and deeper problem with who we are and where we are in our own development that then trickles out to you, and you see it in the classroom, but it's far deeper than just how we teach. And so I think, while I don't believe in trickle-down economy in other contexts, I do think there's something to be said about what really is the core issue here, and that shows up then in everything that we do. And it's far bigger than just fixing with the reading list of how we
Can I ask you then to say what you think the core issue is?
I think the core issue is the racism, the sexism, the homophobia inside of us.
Thank you for naming that.
And how we show up in our scholarship, and how we show up with each other, how we show up as colleagues, and then how we show up to you in the classroom, I think is the root of that. Thank
you. So, one of the recommendations in the task force was an inter-review assessment or an evaluation of SSA. So I wanted to see if you can speak to that, when this will be done. It needs assessment. What was one of the recommendations? And I don't think you have spoken about that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, on the last meeting, you talked about shared governance. And I appreciate that the students are part of the curriculum committee, but I wonder how is that going to look in the different committees? And also that we are not just advisors to the committees, but we are part of the shared governance of this institution. As students that come here, I think we need to be part of the table. Because I think that, personally, that's how I feel. You want us to advise you want us to get the input, but you don't want us to be in the table.
Well, I'm not sure, honestly, I wouldn't agree with that last comment about that we don't want you to be at the table. I think we do want you to be at the table. That's why we started with bringing students in the curriculum policy committee, the diversity, or whatever the label this new standing committee is. We will have students on that committee. So I think we want students to be on that committee. We want students to advise and to be part of the decision making, to be part of the the process of identifying new strategies and implementing the strategies and so forth. So I hear what you're saying about governance, and I think that this is part of why we're including students now on committees that we weren't before.
Can we spend some time when we will be part of the school governance, not just in the curriculum, but the actual governance of the school?
Well, the school is governed by committees. So.
By committees. That's what I'm asking. Yeah. Is there an expectation when we can have the student representations at different, what is called faculty committees, which hopefully would change to the rest of the committees? Are we going to be able to serve on those committees?
Yes, I mean, on the committees I mentioned, yes, that's right. So there are committees like making decisions about tenuring. The university would not permit that students to sit on that committee. They certainly permit students to advise and provide input, but the university just simply would not permit that. So whether you're comfortable with that or not, that's just the world that we live in. On the issue of needs assessment, so my view of that is that this standing committee that will have students on it, and faculty and staff, will take that up to do an audit or a needs assessment, whatever the language is, to study what are the problems, to identify where are we falling short in a concrete, evidence-informed way. So that would be part of that committee to take up. I don't think that we're properly arrayed, and I think that the committee would be the right body to do that.
How will the committee be selected, and will students who serve on it be compensated, and will the faculty who sit on it be faculty of color? We see this constant cycle in institutions where the burden is often placed on students of color and faculty of color to address institutional structural problems. Mm-hmm. My concern, I'm sure the concern of many others, is also
it's all work that we do to advance and govern the school.
It's real social work that we're not getting paid for.
It is. You're right. Right. It's service. It's service to the school and service to the students. Did I say that again?
But we're the only ones paying to be here. What are you talking about? You guys are getting paid to be here. We are paying to be here. You're going into debt to be here. So you talking about us not getting compensated is a completely different issue than you requiring people who are already paid to be here to do their job.
If you give me one moment, just answer.
If you leave the future of the school to a committee of 12 people, it's not going to work. Structural issues in SSA will not be solved by people within SSA, and that's why the Elephant and the organizations that co-signed the petition and why the summer task force we were a part of asked for an external needs assessment to identify structural issues. So I guess I'm just asking you, how are you planning on fixing these structural issues?
Well, that's a grand question in which there's lots of sub-steps, right? So there are many issues that have been raised, clearly, and there are multiple strategies to address them. So whether the evaluator is external or internal, that's a good question. I mean, I know the committee recommended an external audit or an external evaluator, and I think that's something certainly worth considering. I think there are advantages and disadvantages to that, but I also want to hear colleagues that weigh in on it as well. Not only the report of the summer task force, but I also want to hear others' voices on that. I think that's it. It's an open question. What's the best? Who should do that?
May I ask if that came up at all when you had your faculty meeting in terms of the idea of the assessment piece and whether it's internal or external?
I think one of the challenges of answering that question was that the faculty were given the report on a Monday for a Wednesday meeting. And so many of the faculty arrived to that meeting not having been able to respond to that. So we truly haven't had the opportunity as a faculty host being able to read it, to really engage in all the items.
Excuse me, why is that since you had the report already?
As I said earlier, what I was doing was sending and vetting the report with different segments of the SSA community. So
I understand that, but I'm saying if you had the report for weeks, how long did it take you to vet knowing that your faculty was meeting if they were only going to have 2 days to read a 50-page report?
Because I wanted to get feedback from the senior administrators of the school first, so that we could then frame and present it to the full faculty. The faculty are also going to, I'm sorry, can I just finish, Sam, please? The faculty are also going to take this up at the faculty retreat. We talked about doing this at the retreat.
I just don't feel like it was a fair expectation to give them 2 days to read the report so that you could have a meaningful discussion about it. And that's the part I'm confused about. So was your intention not to have a full meaningful discussion at that meeting?
So I would just like to go back to the question that was presented by the transgender student. I think it was brushed under the table. So specifically for me, I actually experienced my own form of microaggression within the first week here, and I had to actually go out on my own to discuss it with someone else about it. However, for me, I want to ask 3 questions I think is really important to be addressed, not swept under the rug and you have someone answer. No, I actually need a few answers, like actually right now. Because specifically, like my money as a transgender student at this campus, on this space right now, is just as important as everyone else's. So specifically, I'm going to start with my question. So what kind of training are staff and faculty being provided with when it comes to actually interfacing with students regarding their gender identity and their gender expression?
I can tell you that's one of the places where we're not where we should be. There's not training yet. We will build that in. So I appreciate you asking that question.
I have another question. Because I feel like I'm going to just we haven't done it. However, how are faculty and staff reflecting on their own biases and privileges? I think that's something that needs to happen. I think it's really interesting how I'm in an anti-oppressive framework class and I'm doing a lot of reflecting. However, the faculty that are teaching me haven't done reflecting. And that speaks volumes. How are faculty and staff are you reflecting on your own power and privilege when it comes to teaching us these materials?
I believe that right now I'm checking myself and my bias and my privileges and my sort of place of orientation because of all of you. Not because necessarily of my leadership here or my training that I've had. I haven't really actually had any training to teach in the classroom. My training came from being a student here, and now it's coming from you all. And your bravery and your pushing and your demand is what's allowing me to check my power and privilege and oppression and assess myself. And so far, that's kind of it. I have models from amazing faculty that I did take classes with. I also was a student of Gina Samuels. I was a student of people who did this really well, and I was a student of people who didn't do it as well. And that was part of my training. And now it's you guys all insisting that I do more. And so I'm looking to my peers and to my leadership to say, give me more, because I'm a new teacher and I need to get better.
Please, yeah.
Hi everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Beth Ann Jacob. I am a cisgender female. I have been affiliated with SSA on and off for about 22 years. I was a PhD student here for 9 years, and now I am a full-time lecturer. I do want you to know that I echo everything that Jessica just said, that the bulk of what I would consider my profound learning experiences as an educator have come in the last year and a half from being here, from my students, from being challenged in the classroom, for trying to have enough humility to shut up and listen and teach with, not teach at. And to answer very specifically your question, for those of you who wrote the identity paper in your 301 sections, I actually, I wrote one myself. I think all of us who gave that assignment have gone through the process of having to force ourselves to write that paper. I'm trying to work through the degree to which I want to share that. I'm rather convinced after today that maybe I should make that a public document over break, but I appreciate your question. And again, I'm here with tremendous sadness that much of what we have done has failed you, but I'm as committed as I can be to being an ally in the position that I hold.
So my last question, I actually don't think this question is a rhetorical question, in fact. Why do students have to experience violence at SSA and also experience it in our field placement?
And as I'm thinking of time, I'm going to give this person the last comment or statement or question to make.
So I actually want to direct my question more towards like first year students and just, it's kind of a two-piece. So first, I just kind of want to know, as first year students coming into this meeting, how well did you feel aware of the issues that were going on at SSA, as in being the administration telling you, or just overall, how did y'all feel coming into this meeting?
I feel very blind, like walking in here. I mean, I've heard some stuff here and there from students mostly, but coming here, I feel like I'm walking into this room
this laden with tension and frustration and hurt and pain, and I'm just sitting here wondering if we really want different things. It seems like we want the same thing. The problem seems to lie in just the time. Here you see by when and by whom, it sounds like it's been a long wait for you second years, and so I almost wonder, Tim really only identifies as a second year. What if there were three things you were like, this could change, this could change, this could change? Like very specific things you want to see change. I wonder if the staff would disagree and say, no, we don't want those things. If they would say, no, we don't want those things. If they would say, we're working on them.
So I don't have an answer for that because I'm a first year, but I was just going to go ahead and ask my second part to first years again as well, is like, and I mean, obviously to administration if you feel the need, is just how do we hold accountable our administration and really keep that in mind, and just acknowledging that resistance doesn't mean that we are completely shutting them down. It's agreeing that we want to see change and that we're going to demand change by any means necessary, honestly.
Hi everybody, I'm a first year student here as well. I think Jared's question sort of gets to the point that there's a lot that happened last year that folks don't know this year. And I had the fortune of taking a couple classes in the spring and the winter quarter of last year. And so one of the questions that I have is, and I think it might actually get at this point, we now have a very real source of information. The Elephant has basically put together a real social work, a Tumblr.org site, a comp site that has a detailed background and history, and it's a way to sort of keeping the information going over the course of the past year. And that's a way in which we can sort of keep that catalog for the future. My question is, would the administration be willing to do the same kind of thing? Placing something on the website of the Social Security Administration site so that they are, one, keeping themselves accountable for the work they're saying they're going to do. Two, allowing them the opportunity to set very specific timelines and requirements over who is going to do what. And then three, it prevents the sort of continuing, let's meet together, ask the same questions over and over again. It just sort of pulls to the very forefront for everyone to have a sense of transparency and communication with what's going on.
Yes, I mean, yes, we'll post the statements, we'll post the community statement, we'll post the steps as we're going forward on the website, so that there's transparency, so we can hold us accountable. The second question was, I'm sorry.
No, that is the question. Basically, it's important to understand that this is a dynamic document. It's not static.
Right.
So as we ask questions,
Yep.
as you say that we're working on this right here,
Yep.
we can sort of have cataloged that here on today, Monday,
Yep.
November 23rd, 2015, we said that we are working on
Yep.
this. So we're keeping us accountable.
Yep. We'll put that on the website, yep. And we'll give updates and so forth. And the Elephant has its website, and hopefully they'll be in alignment. We'll work to try to align them. Okay. All right, well, I understand there's some upset feelings, I understand you're feeling like we're not moving quickly enough, so we'll try. I'm sorry, but we'll try.
So, I will say, in thinking about closing, the piece that continue to resonate is this, where I think many of us have been talking about, is this idea of distrust, right? And I think it is something to me that there is a feeling, there's a sense of not trusting, right? Because, and it is hard to say to folks who continue to sit in misery to be patient. And I think we have to recognize that, right? And we have to hold to that. What I would say is that at the end of the day, we are going to have to wait and see, right? And it doesn't feel good, but I think the only way as we continue to communicate with each other that we're going to be able to see any kind of trust is to see movement, right? Is to see movement. And so it is fair to say that there are still some things that are not going to move as fast as we want them to move, even though people continue to be negatively impacted by them. But I do think we're all here because we want to hold each other accountable. I know that's why I came back over here since April. And I do think collectively we are working to try to move the envelope. And so I do appreciate the continued suggestions, even though I equally acknowledge that you all are not being paid for it. That's always the quandary, right? In terms of having to make these offerings. But I do think what I have to believe is that you all have made a beautiful point of how important this moment continues to be, and that we can't just be still and have to sort of keep this moving. And so I continue to look forward to where we're going to end up collectively, how we're going to be thinking about faculty of color, how we're going to be thinking about sort of the continued requirements or expectations, sort of where expertise are coming from other spaces, how we're able to bring in folks that may not look like us, that still care deeply about the work. There are many of them here at SSA, and so how do we draw in folks, because people don't always have to look like us to show that they care deeply about sort of issues of social justice. So I'm going to encourage us to also hold on to that. But as an administrator as well as a social worker, to continue to be reminded that we too need to continue to self-reflect. So that's something else I'm certainly walking out of here with, is that we're always moving, but do we also need to sort of pause and do some reflection of both the good we're doing and the harm that we could be imposing on the very people that we're trying to sort of partner and work with. So I thank you for coming and for sharing, and let's hope we can have some additional movement the next time we sort of meet together. So good night.